Welcome, friends in Howl TV land. I am so happy to introduce you to some of my many talented friends, all of whom exemplify the spirit of Howl and the East Village and the Lower East Side. I first wandered into the East Village as a very young woman. My immediate feeling was, I am home. I had felt like an alien being in the small town I grew up in. This was it, and the more I learned about the history of the neighborhood, which for at least 150 years has been the center for so many U.S. cultural and progressive political movements, the more I loved it. A home for a diverse group of people bound by the courage to be different and the feeling that they were outsiders elsewhere, artists, political activists, misfits, and lowlifes of all kinds. Likewise, when I started coming to events at Howl, it felt like home. And on this project, the team here have been so welcoming and helpful. Jake Corey, Daniel Wallace, Susan Martin, I cannot thank you enough. And of course, thanks to Jane Friedman for making this possible. So friends, I am happy to welcome you here to Howl, where the paintings of Helen Oliver provide an impressive backdrop. Now, once upon a time, I picked up a literary magazine in St. Mark's bookshop. This is when it was still on St. Mark's Place. The feel of the splintery, uneven floor was part of the atmosphere. Nobody stopped me from standing there and reading. It's a cliche to say my blood ran cold, but that's the best way I can describe my reaction to my first readings of work by Maggie Dubris. Short vignettes told from the point of view of an emergency medical technician revealed a really raw side of New York City that few of us know much about. It was not until years later that I learned more, that Maggie actually is an EMT and has written poetry and fiction about a lot of subjects, notably birds, as well as being a singer-songwriter. I am honored and delighted to have Maggie Dubris here with us.
Thank you, Janie, for that great introduction and for running this series. I'm really excited to see my fellow Lower East Side artists performing. So I'm going to read something that I actually wrote quite a while ago. It's, I guess you would call it an essay. It's called Tientos and Black Holes. It's February 18, 2013, and I'm sitting in my apartment listening to the bang of the radiator, looking out my window at the snow. It blows and swirls, piling up on the fire escape, the pots, and the bird feeder. All the birds are gone today. The world is gray and white, so quiet it could easily be 100 years ago. 1913, the year that the gypsy singer Manuel Torre toured Malaga as the world balanced on the edge of the First Great War. Now we're on the edge of a third one, and which way we'll fall, I don't know. But I'm listening to music, Manuel Torre's voice wavering from the cheap speakers of my computer. He went mute at the end of his life from a badly managed case of aphonia, a disease I've never heard of, even though I've been a medic for years. The word translates roughly as without sound. He sings to me through the static of someone's old 78, transferred to CD. Even the scratches have been transformed into binary numbers. He sounds like he's praying, as if he knows his great gift will leave this world before he will, and with it his heart. The intervals are ancient and mournful. A guitar scrapes behind him, far from the microphone. I don't speak Spanish, so I can only understand a few words: heart, God, lost. I'll never know any more about Manuel Torre than I do now, only less as he drifts farther and farther into the past. For most of human history, the past must have been like an enormous black hole, a place that each lifetime intersected and from which nothing could escape. But then scraps of writing began to emerge. Words worn and battered from their journey through 100 languages, coming to us with most of the writer's soul worn away, but still present somehow, like a fossil traced faintly in shale. Now we have photographs, recordings, movies. I can hear the voice of Manuel Torre more clearly than most of his contemporaries did. He never left Spain and wasn't well known outside his native land. But what do I hear? A voice that never changes, never breaks or rises in any way other than what it did in that one moment, on that one day, many years before I was born. I've been reading a lot about physics lately. The kind of science books with bright covers written for teenagers and poets. This is how I discovered that the Russians have another name for black holes. They call them frozen stars. Not frozen in the sense of temperature, but frozen like photographs. Places where time has ceased to pass. A black hole isn't an actual hole. It has no physical edge, only a boundary called the event horizon, where its mass curves space-time so extremely that light can no longer escape. And that's the point at which time stops. You can't see inside a black hole. You can't even see something go into it. For an observer in the universe, watching an object passing into a black hole, it would appear frozen on the event horizon, caught in the last posture it held in time. Depending on whose book you read, it would either remain there forever or very quickly begin to fade. But everyone agrees that if you were inside the falling object, you would experience something very different from what the observer saw. In the instant you crossed the event horizon, all of time would have passed in the universe outside. So, if the hole were big enough, and if you were able to see out, the world's future flashing before you would be the only way you would know that you had entered something you could never leave. This is because inside a freely falling object, the laws of physics remain constant, unchanging. Here are the facts I know about Manuel Torre. He was an illiterate gypsy who loved women, greyhounds, and fighting cockerels. He was tall. His father wanted him to be a fisherman. He rode a donkey to his performances. He had several children with his daughter-in-law. He was born in Jerez and died of TB in Sevilla. At the time of his death, he was so poor, a friend had to pay his hospital bills. Another covered the cost of the funeral. And that was his life. Manuel Torre, the flamenco singer who Lorca claimed broke the shine off the mirrors. He looks out at me from a scruffy photograph on the cover of the CD. His hat, a strange amalgam of derby and top hat, forever tilted slightly to the right. I wondered if he worried about the Great War, and later, what effect Franco and the fascists had on him. Was he afraid? Did he fear for his family? For Lorca, who would be executed in the olive groves only 3 years after his own death? Or was he caught in his own small world, falling through a larger one, unable to see the changes outside his own life? Sometimes I believe that all worlds are falling. My life falls through what I perceive as time. My planet falls through space-time, which is warped by the mass of the sun, which falls through the bumpy Milky Way, which falls around a black hole from which my galaxy may have been formed. And my galaxy falls, and maybe my universe is one of many, swirling and falling through something I can't begin to fathom. I think about this as I listen to one of the tientos. From what I can decipher, it's a song about the mountains, a small house, and sugarcane and time and sand. The title means touches. He must have sang the song 1,000 times in his life, each time slightly different. But only this version survived, a glimpse of the dark soul of perhaps the greatest flamenco singer who ever lived, frozen on the rim of the past. It's much easier to travel into the future than into the past. All you need is a rocket traveling close to the speed of light, or a stick to etch letters into clay, or a microphone and an old tape deck. I hear the voice of Manuel Torre, but he'll never hear mine, singing from beyond the grave. I wish I could say to him, look, it all doesn't matter in the eons that make up this world, to spend a year or two without a voice, hospital bills printed on paper that crumbles, a funeral caught in mines that will be dust before your century is done. Because you've launched your soul into the future, where all the sadness in this universe can never touch it. Faruqa begins to play, and for a moment, I'm not sitting here in my New York apartment with my computer and my can of soda, wondering if this spring will bring more destruction to the city that I love. I'm caught inside a song, falling with Manuel Torre, in a world where a shepherdess weeps on a mountaintop, lemon trees and olives flower, and there's a place to rest, high up, if you only climb long enough. Thank you.
Philip Shelley first came to my attention as a precocious teenage songwriter in one of my all-time favorite bands, the Student Teachers. We remained friends, and he continued writing songs throughout a number of bands and incarnations. Now he has written a novel, which gives us a 21st century version of a classic American heroine, of the sort that Wharton, James, and Fitzgerald wrote. Brilliant, beautiful, privileged, and deeply troubled. Philip Shelley joins us from Bath, Maine, to read from Willett.
Hi everyone, my name's Philip, and I'll be reading from my forthcoming novel, which is called Willett. Before I start reading, I just want to say thank you to everyone at Howl, who does such good work, and to Janie, of course. Thanks, Janie. I'm very pleased and proud and excited and a little bit humbled to be part of this illustrious ensemble that you've put together. Let's see what else. I'm reading from my home in Bath, Maine, which is in Mid-Coast, Maine, and it's freezing. It's terrible outside today, and I'm very homesick, so it's especially nice to be part of this and feel like I'm in New York a little bit. I wish I was doing this in person. It seems that the worse the state of the world gets, the more acute my homesickness gets. Anyway, this is from my novel Willett. I'm just going to read the opening scene, so there's no setup. It's just the beginning of the book. The first chapter is entitled Craig's Funeral, and it does indeed take place at, well, not Craig's funeral, at a memorial gathering for Craig. So this is chapter 1 of Willett. The way I usually try to explain Willett is that I just felt less alone knowing she was around. I don't mean less alone like there was another body in the room, or as occasionally happened, in the bed. I mean less alone like maybe the universe had created at least one other being in whose eyes I saw even the faintest glimmer of something that wasn't completely terrifying and alien to me. I first met her in 1999 at a memorial for my friend Craig MacDonald, which was held at Craig's ex-girlfriend's opulent Brooklyn townhouse. Craig was a crazy half-Mexican anarchist philosopher who had recently begun to have some success in New York as a playwright. I'd known him since college, and we had done time together working in the same bar. A few weeks earlier, Craig had gotten hammered and walked into the East River with his coat pockets jammed full of rocks. There was no mystery to it. He left a characteristically long and eloquent note in his apartment explaining everything. I wasn't shocked, and I didn't blame him, as I never blamed suicides in those days. I thought the world was mostly unbearable and getting worse every minute. It was doubtful I could ever actually do what Craig had done, but I thought about it all the time. To me, it made sense. Just a fast-motion version of what we did practically every night anyway. Craig's ex-girlfriend was named Rebecca, and she was an award-winning magazine photographer. They had broken up a few years before, but kept joint custody of a couple of cats, and Rebecca did her best to make sure Craig was taking care of himself. I knew for a fact that whenever Rebecca dropped off the cats at Craig's apartment, she always brought along a shopping bag with a 2-week supply of homemade frozen dinners. She and I had met many times, and we were generally cordial, but I always got the feeling that she didn't really approve of me. The memorial service fell on a blue and bright October afternoon, a perfect day for daytime drinking. Rebecca greeted me at the door herself and led me inside. She looked hollowed out, as though she'd been crying for days. In her large front room, there were side tables laden with food and floral arrangements, and a few mourners standing around in groups of 2s and 3s. I found the liquor in the dining room, laid out on a big oak table with a half a dozen older gentlemen, poets or professors was my guess, huddled around it. Farther back was a kitchen as yet unoccupied, and beyond that, a little fenced-in yard with a badminton net. Through the kitchen window, I saw some of the 20-somethings from the theater had already set up camp out there on the grass, and they were passing a bottle around. Though it was still early, people I knew were beginning to arrive, and I made a point of going through all the rooms again, exchanging hugs and condolences before I fixed my first drink. Having only been awake for a few hours, and not having eaten anything yet, I calculated that wine would probably be the safest choice. I filled a tall glass with Saint-Emilion and set myself up in the cushioned window seat in the front parlor. I sat there, thinking about poor Craig and watching the afternoon sun flutter through the lace curtains. Then I heard the sound of a bottle shattering in front of the house. I looked through the window and saw a taxicab. Its hood covered with broken glass and slick with what I could only guess was vodka. A disheveled blonde woman was leaning into the passenger side window and screaming at the driver. She screamed and banged her little blonde fists on the roof of his car until finally the poor man saw his chance to get away without running her over and sped off. As the woman turned and came through the front gate, I saw that she was not quite as disheveled as I had first imagined. She had on an expensive white dress and a tiny red cardigan with black trim. Her hair was haphazardly styled, about half of it restrained by an intricate network of bobby pins, the other half hanging in random streamers around her face. Now that I got a good look, she actually seemed kind of preppy, a child of the suburbs. I watched as she clambered up the stairs and into the house. For several moments, the blonde woman stood in the front hallway, holding a little white clutch in front of her body with both hands like a schoolbook, while she gave the room a purposeful once-over. Eventually, her eyes came around to me, sitting quietly in the front window with my giant soda glass full of bright red wine. She didn't look away, and I felt like she was expecting me to say something. "The bar's back there," I told her. "Show me," she said. About an hour later, the blonde woman and I were sitting outside on the back kitchen steps. The white dress was bunched up over her knees, and her heels had been kicked off onto the grass. Over the course of several drinks, double vodka tonics for her, more red wine for me, I learned that her name was Mary Kate Willett. She was 31 years old, 2 years younger than me, and she had grown up in Larchmont, in a turreted, cut-stone Tudor house overlooking Long Island Sound. She currently lived in Morningside Heights on Amsterdam near 110th Street, and was employed variously as an actress, as a journalist, and doing some kind of freelance PR work, mostly on the internet. Her boyfriend, Dave, was the artistic director of the company that produced Craig's plays. He was supposed to be arriving any minute. "Look," she said, motioning with her highball glass at the theater kids, who were now earnestly engaged in some vaguely anarchic version of badminton out on the lawn. "Everyone processes grief in their own way," I said. Willett took several sips from her drink, then tilted her head at me. "I'm curious. I mean, do you think it was worth it? Because I think it was totally worth it." "Was what worth what? What are you talking about?" "I don't know," she said. "I think everyone here is kind of tiptoeing around the suicide thing, and I don't understand why." "What's not to understand? I mean, if Craig didn't like it here, that's his fucking business, right? Frankly, I don't really like it here either." She held out her arms in a manner that indicated the entirety of the cosmos. I smiled. I was already feeling tipsy, and I kind of wanted to put my arm around her and tell her I could make it better. But I knew I couldn't do that, so instead I just said, "Yeah." "I mean, I didn't know Craig as well as you guys did, but when they were doing The Most Courteous Summer last year, I spent a lot of time hanging around the theater, and he and I talked about a lot of stuff." "I'm not surprised he took a liking to you." "Actually, at first, I was sure he hated me. He called me country club, blondie, all kinds of awful names. He would just sit at rehearsals and growl. And when he wasn't growling, he would sort of curl up in the last row and hide inside his raincoat. Everyone was afraid of him." "Yeah, I knew that guy too. So what changed?" "On opening night, we all went out to the Druid, and it was the first time I had ever seen Craig outside the theater. You know, it was a hit, and he was drunk, happy, approachable, right? We got to talking, and he started telling me about the hospital, and how the doctors fucked him up with so many drugs so he couldn't think. And he told me how he cried every night he was in there because he couldn't write anymore, and because the drugs made him fat." He and I talked about that. "And the first thing he did when he got out, he ceremonially threw all his medications off the Brooklyn Bridge. He told me his doctors were furious. His old school Mexican mamacita was furious. The lady whose house this is, Rebecca was furious. Everyone told him he was crazy not to take the drugs, that he was being irresponsible, but," and here she hugged her own knees tight, "he couldn't do good work on that shit. No one can." I was with him that night. "Were you?" Willett stretched out her long legs, allowing them to brush against mine. "We were up on the walkway, right at the midway point. It was like 2 a.m. The lights of the city shone round about us. Craig played it to the hilt, shaking his fist and shouting, 'Would you give Prozac to Virginia Woolf? Would you give Zoloft to Van Gogh?' Was it pouring rain with thunder and lightning? No, sadly not. Too bad. But we did have a bottle of tequila, and we were laughing our asses off." "Exactly." She held up her glass. "To art." "To art," I said, and we clinked. There was a commotion on the lawn, and we watched as one of the badminton players, inexplicably shirtless, climbed over a chain-link fence to retrieve the errant shuttlecock from a neighbor's yard. After a while, Willett said, "I think his plays were very special, very beautiful. There are scenes I can still recall word for word, and they still give me goosebumps." She held out her bare white arm as evidence. He was good, you know? Yeah, I know. He could write. No, that's not what I mean, she frowned at me. I mean he was good. I can't explain it. Now you have to. I don't know, it's like everything is so accelerated now that it's meaningless, right? And we throw around all these useless fucking words like awesome and amazing and incredible, and we don't even know what good means. I'll never understand that. How can anything be better than good? She picked the lime off the rim of her glass and bit down on it, making a face. Willett, can I ask you something? She tossed the lime wedge onto the grass, put her hand on my knee, and leaned forward with an expectant smile. Sure, she said. You can ask me anything. Just then, a tall man with art director glasses and a well-tailored Italian suit came out onto the back porch. There you are, he said to Willett. He leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. They told me you were out here. Willett stood up awkwardly. Dave, she said. This is Michael. Michael is an old college friend of Craig's. Nice to meet you, said Dave, shaking my hand. Sorry it has to be under these circumstances. Dave put his arm around the small of Willett's back. Come on inside and say hello to Craig's aunt. She's here all the way from Mexico. She really wants to meet you. So that's about it. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, and Happy New Year to everyone. Bye.
Philip Shelley and I were discussing this project, and he suggested I include Leah Hennessy. I said, she's fantastic, but I don't know her. He laughed and sent me an adorable picture of her from his wedding, and I'm in the background in a hat in the back right. I have only just gotten to know her in person as an adult in connection with this show, but I do know she is an incredibly charismatic and multi-talented young woman. She has grown up around the downtown New York art scene and is strongly connected to the Howl community ethos. Here's Leah Hennessy.
Hi, I'm Leah Hennessy, and I'm going to play some songs today. I'm really happy to be here at Howl, one of my favorite event spaces on the Lower East Side, maybe in the whole city. And I'm working on a new album. And by new album, I mean my debut album. And I'm going to play just a couple songs. Don't talk too much. Don't get so philosophical. You could break me now with just one touch. Would it make the game painfully casual? Would you rather be right or happy? Says the man with the sun-flooded wife. All my saints died of melancholy. Don't tell me there's more to life than not getting what you want, failing to become, dying on the pyre of desire, not ever being the one you swore that you would be, and seeing someone lame in the mirror if there is. Don't tell me, 'cause I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know. Don't pick my brain. If you got in there, I would die of shame. If only there was a way to say, you make me feel like, you make me feel like, you make me feel like an unnatural simulation of a girl miss him. Would you rather be right or happy? Says the girl with no sex drive left. I would never do anything, baby. You know me, I just like to sit on the rocks, writing in my book, hiding from my thoughts, dressing like the Prince of Denmark. I've got this shit figured out. No need to go back now. No need to act natural. I'm not. And if I am, don't tell me, 'cause I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know. Okay, I'm gonna play another song. Every robin used to mean a change was coming. But since I saw all those robins on your lawn, I'm not so sure. I don't trust the seasons, and I don't trust the kids, 'cause a kid with a stick, whacking leaves, throwing trees, is enough to make you doubt. But I wanna believe. I wanna believe. 'Cause what if nothing comes back the way you want it? This is just a trap to get you longing, getting up your hopes for a summer where your love doesn't drown. You went off in a boat, and you didn't come back. I waited on the shore, writing our names on all the rocks. And I danced at the wedding, and I threw up outside the church. And I didn't kiss anyone for months, and even then I wasn't sure. 'Cause what if nothing comes back the way you want it? This is just a trap to get you longing, getting up your hopes for a summer where your love doesn't fade into the clouds. Some kind of change must be allowed. Some kind of end to the seasons. Some kind of end to the fall. Some kind of end to personal history. Some kind of end to it all. 'Cause the early bird gets the worm, and the early world gets the word. Yeah, the early bird gets the worm, and the early world gets the word. Okay, this last song is written about a friend of mine who doesn't know that I wrote this song for her. And every time I play it, I'm afraid that she's gonna see it and be like, why are you writing songs for me when you don't call me? And it would mean a lot more if you just responded to an email. But maybe she won't see it this time, and I'll have time to get back in touch with her in like a human way and not in an artistic way. When Isadora explains through Google Translate why she doesn't believe in God, that's when I feel God with me. When Oscar Wilde explains in De Profundis why religion won't save his soul, that's when I feel my soul saved. But I don't want to believe sorrow is the answer. I don't want to be Catholic, but I still want to cry. I want to have my Catholic style cake and eat it and still believe in nothing, and still do whatever I want with my life. When I saw Isadora that night in the moonlight, she looked just like Cleopatra, and I understood that life was made for loving, and that only selfless love was good. But it's been so long since I wrote her a letter, and now she's a mother. She's like an alien, some further stage of evolution. But her heart still bleeds and she still gets so sad. But I don't want to believe pain is the mother and fall down like a Catholic, eyes to the sky. I want to have my slice of redemption and still fuck off and blithely strive, and still believe for once in my life that I can be happy before I die, and that that's important and it's not a lie. And the veil won't be lifted. I don't want to see the tears of idle eyes. I don't want to see the bridge of sighs. Thank you very much, and hello to Howl and friends, and I hope to see everybody in person very soon. Thank you.
This is a short story called Riderless. I'm going to read the first half. It ain't matterin' on what account she did it. It ain't matterin' if even she is not the one that did it. All that's matterin' to me is this kind of strange, flat way my brain feels on account of I just found a picture of me and her from way back when. There she is, this happy little fat kid. Anyway, she looks happy. Fat kids always look happy in photos. Anyway, we usually mostly think so, like we usually mostly think of kids in general being happy, even our own kids' selves, even when we know damn straight we were not, like for instance me, who would rather probably have my brains blasted out the back of my head before having to be a kid again the way it was when I was a kid. Maybe she felt the same way, though that, of course, ain't in any way mattering or pertaining to what or why she did what she did, because nobody anyway gets a chance to be a kid again, whether for happy or sad. I wish that when I was a little baby I had died. That is something she did say to me, said it right after sliding hard down the big slide that used to be in my nearby park. We had clambered up and slid, clambered, slid, over and over fast until we lay on our backs in that crackly grass underneath the tree we called Magic. We were laughing and gasping. That died down. That is when she said that baby dying thing. Do not ask me why she said it just then. Who knows what triggers a little kid? She said a baby goes straight to heaven when it dies right after being baptized. That straight to heaven stuff is what she learned in Sunday school, in a school where she earned a tiny gold star whenever she dragged me along, dragged me away from the sleep in our cartoons, which I sure as hell preferred. She learned about being born with sins which I could not see how she, this happy little fat kid, could be born with, her daddy being the sheriff and all, her last name being the same as the one on all the signs come election time. We lay on the crackly grass, the sheriff's kid and me, on the ragged new-mown shoots that poke and itch, and her face went wet and red when she learned that I had not been baptized and would therefore go to hell. God would not make it be like that, so there, is maybe what I said, me not knowing then not to contradict her church, not knowing how unhappy she would get if I did. She got all unhappy, and in a way that made me happy, it being on my account, her being my only friend and all, her being the sheriff's daughter. But her being so unhappy meant I would go to hell. But that was not mattering or pertaining in any way to me on account of I did not go to her church. I did not go to any church, but I did believe in God, and my God would take me up to heaven, like he would take most everybody up to heaven. Anyway, we usually mostly think so, even me, who was mostly unchurched. Unchurched or no, I hated to see her cry, and I thought about the tree and why we called it Magic. I went and bit a piece off with my mean child teeth. Magic tree bark makes your tongue go all tingly. It is hard to keep on crying when you have a tingling tongue. I gave her the bark. Sure enough, it stopped her crying. But that park day was pretty much shot. We lay in the shade of the tree that had been Magic. We were grown too big to call it that, so we called it its real name. The late day sun still blasted, so we lay in the shade of the prickly ash tree because we were grown too big for sliding, but we still liked the park more than home. She was grown too thin to be a fat kid. In school pictures, she still looked happy. She pretty much looked happy even outside of pictures, same as she acted happy, on account of, I guess, the kids she ran around with acted happy. I for damn sure did not act happy, which was pretty much probably why she pretended not to know me. Leastways not when we were at school, not when she was with that crowd she ran with, a crowd which I for damn sure did not fit in with, but then I pretty much never fit in with any crowd. I never fit in with that or any crowd, but just alone we met here sometimes in this park, the sheriff's kid and me, under the tree shade in the ragged new-mown shoots. It was here with just us alone she said she was not happy. It was here she could say she thought life sucked. Kids that age usually mostly think life sucks. Anyway, we usually mostly think so. And anyway, she thought so, though that ain't in any way mattering or pertaining to what eventually happened, because that came a whole lot later. Back at that age, I was left wondering and pondering what it could be that made her so unhappy, her being her daddy's darling, him being the sheriff and all, him being the richest sheriff our county or mostly any county had ever seen. I was left wondering what I might do to make her more happy, to make her want to be with me here in this park. Now we were grown so that the magic tree was not magic. We lay underneath the tree with the bark on our tongues, feeling the funny little buzz, the little kick, and I said, "The way the tingling feels makes me think about the bits, like the way they said in class, that all of everything is only made of little bits." She said, "I hate that class, it sucks, it's goofy and it's boring." I said, "I know, but I like the bits. Little bits jump all around like the way the tingling feels. Little bits are all there is in the world. There are no lines between. There are no lines like when you're a kid and they tell you to color in a book. It's more like a picture in the paper, just lots of little dots. Or more like a TV picture, just moving, jumping bits. You, the slide, the tree, it's just neutrons and its protons, just mixed up different ways, but really all the same. There are no lines between. That is what I tried to say to make her see it the way I saw it, but I should have known better than to say about that or about anything in any class. Me being easily better at that sort of thing than her getting not allowed to watch TV every time she did not make the honor roll, which she usually mostly did not, which is why I should also not have said anything about TV. Her being here with me in the park probably being on account of her getting not allowed to watch. I should have known that she would say something like, "Ain't mattering to be about no proteins and no neurons. I don't want to talk about that." "But it's not about the class," I said, me mostly always just making things worse by shooting my mouth off on stuff nobody else cared about. "It's about how I can see it, and then I feel better on account of I can see that nothing has any lines or edges or is any way at all the way folks usually mostly think it is. Stop is definitely what she said. And I hate it when you talk like that. Everybody hates it when you talk like that. That is why nobody likes you. You are creepy and you are boring. You should talk like other people about things that are fun. And you use big funny words and it makes you sound stuck up. Do not talk about no bits." I did not talk about no bits, not after that barrage, the 2 times she had said the word hate, piercing me not too much more than any 2 of the many jagged grass shoots my tender, young, short-wearing skin was laying on, me being so used to people saying that they hated what I said or that they hated me. I stopped about the bits and let her go on about the stuff that was supposed to be fun, like the dances and the parties and the ball games I was not on any account going to be going to, me resolving not to talk too much because I never got it right, me trying to pay attention to the stuff she said I ought to, but in all the dim orange of the down-going late-day sun, it was happier to see the way the girl, the slide, the tree, were all just made of merging bits. Thank you.